like if I'm in A here and I play thirds, and then I go to the flat 5 here, and I take that and I move it down.
That's the thing. That solo is so unhinged, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah,
It
well,
sounds like
this is not what he played, but it's a similar kind of texture.
pretty close. Yeah,
You know.
It sounds awesome.
Well, thanks
But
for
you
the
can take
walkthrough.
that same idea and shape and move it across different sets of strings, you know, and like even if I did it like this. You know, it's just like a placeholder thing that you can use to shift into a new position.
Where are we at?
We are at the Ridgefield Playhouse in Ridgefield, Connecticut.
Yeah, all right. Hey guys, this is Russ and Ryan. We're at the Ridgefield Playhouse in Ridgefield, Connecticut. And today we had a chance to go on stage live with Mr. Dweezil Zappa, talk about his music, his father's music, his rig rundown, and so much more. Hope you guys enjoy.
Went with the bigger, like Frank style.
Oh yeah.
It's just
Who's
easier
that from?
to hold on. This is just a
Clayton or
regular
D'Addario?
D'Addario, but
Yeah.
the problem is they don't make this anymore, and I need more of these. And people keep asking for picks, and
Are they just donating them?
well, I don't know what, you know. This is like, I guess, not a very popular pick for them, but it's just a regular celluloid, but in this shape
thin, yeah.
and super thin.
Yeah.
It's like a 0.55 or something.
Oh my
you know?
God.
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
More it evaporates.
Yeah, I know. I would feel like it's good for strumming, but I didn't know Ed used a pick that thin.
yeah, super thin because that's what makes the pick slides sound good.
Oh,
I didn't know that
Yeah.
either.
see? It's
Yeah,
learn
so that's
something.
something
Nuances.
like
Well, like what's normal strings you use? Like, are you using just
I use
tens or?
I use very light strings.
Yeah.
I use 8s.
Oh wow.
Oh,
okay.
wow.
Holy kid.
But like, you know, if you hear like a pick slide, I'll show you the difference with we'll go to a Van Halen sound. So if you give me one of those black picks, doesn't sound good at all.
Well, it sounds.
That's a stupid difference.
Yeah, but a regular, you know, like a heavy pick,
That just mutes the strings almost. Yeah.
it just doesn't. It catches on it. Doesn't. It just doesn't sound like a jet engine, like, you know, like this.
You could articulate it completely differently.
Yeah,
with
but
that.
also, like, let's say I play this riff. So listen to same riff, but this pick. It doesn't have the vibe. This is like snappy.
And that's
The
with
attack.
eights.
There's more bite in the attack. And those
Yeah.
eight to what? Like 38?
I think it's 42.
Oh, all right. So
Yeah, it's heavier on the bottom, but the sound difference of versus playing with like a heavy pick, that doesn't sound as much like Van Halen.
Right,
you
right.
know? It's like this has more of the vibe.
and that goes to show you how something that simple, like a pick, puts you in that headspace. Like
Yeah.
you're there.
Yeah, totally. Like,
Outside of EVH, do you use those picks?
yeah, I am now. Yeah. it just doesn't have the snap
Like you
to
said,
it.
the snap, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but for Frank's stuff and for your stuff, are you using the same, or are you
I'm using this.
for everything?
Yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I just
Then
got...
what are you using?
Those are Zach's picks. But we're just using it as an example of like...
What a difference. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you just wouldn't... Nobody would really know that makes that much of a difference.
But that's the thing, half the people that are in the crowd are not going to know if you muff a note or if it doesn't sound exact, but you will. And it comes down to how you feel about playing it.
Yeah, for sure. And the feel is everything right at the point of creation.
I'm not going to lie, that one's pretty obvious. I feel like even people out there are going to hear a difference between those two.
Yeah, but if
a
someone
big
just gave you a
difference.
pick and they said, hey, play Eruption or whatever, not that you pick much in it, but you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
AB in that was like...
You would get away with it.
Well, yeah,
for sure.
you wouldn't necessarily know it unless there was an AB. You go, wow, that one is way better.
Yes.
You know?
Totally
So,
heard the difference, for
yeah,
sure.
Yeah, I mean, because on all the stuff, like, you know,
Right.
like all that kind of stuff, again, if I play it with that, it'll just sound heavier. It'll sound like I'm digging in more.
Right.
And it won't have the vibe at all. Like it's just like
Yeah, no, it's
It's almost,
night and day.
it's dragging a little bit.
yeah.
But it's just funny because I just saw something recently with Yngwie and he's saying, you need that harder pick for what he does.
Yeah.
And he uses really light strings and pretty high action, but he likes a stiff pick because he says there's no latency for doing that neoclassical thing, but you're playing really fast Eddie stuff with so it just kind of flies in the face of that. It's pretty wild.
Well, it's, and everyone's like, you gotta have the big heavy strings for the tone. It's like, do you?
Apparently not,
Yeah.
no. Well, listen,
Yeah.
think about it. Jimmy Page, Billy Gibbons, Brian May, they all use 9s or 8s.
Yeah.
which always
I think
blows my mind.
Billy Gibbons uses 7s.
Yeah.
And no, I'm not kidding.
Oh yeah, I know. My dad used to use 7s in the 70s.
How do you find them?
They used to have to steal them from banjo sets.
Okay. That's ridiculous. I think it's one of the things that's a great diving off point too, is aside from what a genius Frank was and compositionally how complex everything was, the sense of humor he had with it and the unrelenting desire to tweak and tweeze things, as he said.
Yeah.
And that must have been amazing to grow up in a house and just to see it in real time. Like, why is there an amplifier in the bathroom or whatever? Like, just this, like nothing was off. He could just do it.
Yeah, and that's the ultimate goal, is to create anytime and do whatever you want to do. And I don't think a lot of people have any idea what that would feel like, because they're not given the permission, or they don't even give themselves the permission to pursue that. It's really like Oedipus, or the Sisyphus rather, pushing up the rock up the hill. Like, that's the thankless task you're just doing all the time. And my dad would constantly make stuff that was so difficult that everybody would say, no, why would you do that? And it was only because he wanted to do it. So you get to the top of the hill, go right back down, because nothing ever gets easier, Well,
that's true too. I mean, go ahead, but I just, to me, that's the most it's the most enduring part of his legacy to me, and that you're keeping alive, is that sense of, it just seems so casual and cool and off the cuff, but there was so much theory and musicality behind it, and yet he was smiling the whole, like it was almost like he was laughing at it.
Yeah.
Well, that is part of it. If you can keep yourself entertained, then it's not work,
Good point.
So,
yeah.
So over the years with digging into his material, I mean, ever since you were young, I've heard a few interviews where it seems like, they ask you, hey, so did Edward or did your dad show you that? And you'd be like, no, I figured it out. Is like, so there's no manual, clearly, that went on.
No. Well, for me, whenever I would learn something, whether it's my dad's songs or Van Halen or whatever it is I'm trying to learn, I like to try to learn as close to what I hear on the record as I can, meaning get the sound, the nuances, and the notes. Because if I'm saying, hey, I've learned how to play this song, I want to play what the person actually played, and not just some sort of variation on it. Of course I could do my own interpretation at some point, but it would be fair to say that you have to learn the foundation of what it is to say that you're actually playing it before you change it. you know?
Well, that's true. I mean, because growing up as a child in the 80s and trying to get a Van Halen sound through a PV band and an EQ pedal, it just wasn't going to happen. You could learn the songs, you could get the feeling and the phrasing, but when you finally nailed it, there's so much equipment at our avail now to get the sound of something. Even if it's just a patch, it says Eddie or Brown sound, and it's close. And then you can tweak it and you're like, there it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know?
It does help. I mean, obviously the harmonic content of whatever you're playing, if it's closer to the person's tone that you're trying to replicate, it will be easier to play that song or that solo because it's already got the harmonic fingerprint started, so that it's easier to get the actual, you know, like let's say a pick harmonic type of. If I went to some other sound that didn't have that kind of thing, like here, and I play the same thing, I didn't get any harmonics. I didn't get any of the stuff because it just wasn't built into that sound.
See, gear does make a difference. I told you.
Yeah.
So was there an element to kind of what Russ was saying? Was there an element like you're in the house and you know the gear is there, you know your dad was there or any musicians that were coming in and out? Was this kind of arm's length kind of thing, like don't let Dweezil see what we're doing, let him figure it out himself? Or was it like, no, come on in and...
Oh, that kind of stuff was all fair game.
Was
you know, I got to learn and ask questions and see things as they were happening. But when it came to learning stuff from records, I would ask my dad to help me sometimes. When I really started early on, let's say I was trying to learn Revelation Mother Earth from Blizzard of Oz. My dad really wasn't the guy that was interested in learning other people's licks. Mm-hmm. So he would show me, here's what the chord progression is, and he'd show me some ways to play some of the chords. He said, but you got to figure out the rest, because he says, I wouldn't even be able to figure out Randy's solo. He said, I just, you know, that's not my thing.
Right.
So, but for me, I would have to sit there for hours.
Woodshed.
Yeah. And that's how I learned all the things that I learned, just by slowing things down or whatever I could. But that was before we had the ability to slow it down and keep it in the same pitch. You know, we'd have to
slow the record
down or whatever, and you'd have to learn it in a different spot and then move it, you know, after it. So it was.
Can you think of a time with your gear where you started to ramp up and you kind of had that affinity for like collecting pedals and what that like kind of looked like?
I never have been like one of those obsessive collectors, like, oh, I have to have this, and oh, I really just used what was needed for some of the ideas that I wanted to get to. So I did amass a fair amount of stuff, but then it's all sort of like it's been swapped out and changed over. I never get too precious about whatever it is. Like, you know, even guitars, if I didn't have the guitars that I have, I could start over with whatever seemed to work that day. It just doesn't matter to me. You know, like I like a cool guitar that plays well, but if another one comes along,
But that's similar to your dad or to Eddie or to any a list of players that we love. They never thought a question. They're like, I'm taking a hacksaw to this, and I'm gonna make it do what I want it to do.
Yeah.
And so there's something beyond just notes and technique. There's this attitude, like there's a sound that I need, and I'm going to use the equipment I've got. And if I have to hack at the bits to do it, I'll do it.
Yeah, so there's that, but it's also like never being too precious. Like, oh, if I don't have that with me. Now, I will say an SG is the easiest guitar for me to play my dad's stuff on, just for access.
That makes sense.
So, and some of my SGs play better than others, so I do get used to the ones that play a certain way. But I could adjust, you know, over time. It's just that, like I said, I don't think I have a mental attachment to something, whereas some people get so obsessive about their things that if they don't have it just right, their day is ruined. And I just feel like that's not
And it's
a
not
reasonable
feasible.
way to live.
Absolutely. Like if you're on the road and the magic box doesn't show up, it's like, well, we still have to do a show. Something has to go.
Yeah, we did a show in South America, and seconds before going on stage, something had to be moved on the drum kit, and a tech went out and they moved the microphone, and as they were climbing off the stage, they knocked my guitar over and broke the headstock.
Oh, no.
And so then there was all this panic and people thinking, oh no, what's going to happen? Are we going to have a show? It's like, well, we do have a backup guitar, so yes. But
Tell everyone to go home.
Yeah,
Sorry.
But there are probably other versions of that story where the person would be instantly fired for destroying the guitar.
Oh, you didn't fire?
No, it was, as long as we had another guitar, we were good. But it didn't throw me off, because it was just like, all right, we have another guitar. If we didn't have another guitar, then it'd be a little bit more difficult because then I'd have to adjust to whatever borrowed guitar, and that would be harder for me.
So for this tour, and you were saying, that must be the exhausting part. It's not so much about what albums should we focus on from Frank. It's more about, we're going to do a version from 73 versus a version from 79 or 82 or whatever. How do you decide on that for the tour? You're like, let's stick to this era, or is it just like, it just feels like the right thing to do?
Well, the tour is called Apostrophe because it's a combination of Roxy and Elsewhere and Apostrophe, and I have the actual guitar my dad played on both of those records. It's this SG right here. So whenever I am playing songs from it, I've found versions that we've never played before, because to me that was the exciting part. We've played probably 1,500 plus concerts since 2006. And I've played a lot of these songs in different versions before, but we found some versions of songs like Inca Roads or Montana or Cosmic Debris where it's the very first time it was ever performed. And early versions often have different parts in them and even different lyrics. Like the version of Montana we do has different lyrics in it, different harmonies. So at that point, those are the things that make it more special for me, is to do something that's a super rare version that then opens the door for a different kind of improvisational feeling. And I think that this version of the band is probably different for the audience in a lot of ways, because it's the first time I'm really kind of adding a little bit more of my own personality to everything. And we're really being quite a bit more goofy on stage with the stuff that we do.
Yeah.
So I feel like the band has a personality, whereas before it was really just, we're playing this music that's very specifically arranged.
And you have to execute it.
Right. And so now it's more like, well, what does this band sound like when they play together? And there's just a different flavor that's added to this tour that we haven't really had before. And I think that's been noticed by people, and they've been having fun
picking up on it.
Yeah, but it does make the every time we go on stage, something is going to happen that we've never done before. And we find that with the double drumming, with two drummers playing, I have two choices to listen to during a solo sometimes. And if I start picking up on something and then either one of them pick on what's happening, we have this interplay stuff that's never happened before. And sometimes we end up magically playing the same figure where it seems like it would be impossible, but out of nowhere we all start playing the same thing. And it's that's
the
really
magic.
Yeah, that's super fun. And part of what helps that happen is that somebody could keep a groove, and then somebody could pick up on whatever the phrase. Let's say I'm doing something that's like, and this has nothing to do with any of the sounds I would use in the show, but let's say I was doing like groups of five, like this kind of thing. So if I repeated something like that, somebody might start playing that, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, while a groove is happening, and then we might play. If he keeps the same rhythm, I can keep moving the notes around. But the whole thing continues on, but then we start shifting it by an eighth note or something, and then the feel gets real weird. So we get into these moments that are super unique, and that's where we all go, hey, whoa, did you hear that? You know,
But how do you come out of that? You can walk into trouble, but how do you get back out? What's
that's the fun part is the band is really good at adapting and listening and turning in, becoming whatever it needs to be. It's like the chameleon of the moment. You know?
So your dad was notorious for wanting everyone to be on the same page and to kind of listen to what he was doing, and if he would fire people if they weren't really bringing to the table what he wanted them to.
Yeah.
What was the thing that you maybe remember, like the one thing that drove him the most nuts that would get someone kicked off a tour?
Well, obviously, if they were not pulling their weight and then also doing things that could get them in trouble, like
Extracurricular things.
Yeah, if they were doing extracurricular things, that was the immediate. His phrase was, "Window or aisle? How would you like to return home?" The thing about the musical side of things that would drive him nuts is if you're basically a team player and you have a role and you're supposed to stay in this lane and the music works when everybody's in their lane, if you start jumping into somebody else's lane and you're doing your own thing to say, hey, look at me, everybody, look what I can do.
Not a team player.
Yeah, my dad's not into that. So there were a lot of times when people would try to overstep their bounds and do too much while comping or start changing voicings on parts, and he'd be like, no, this is, you have to do this. And if they would continue to do that because, that was I'm expressing myself, it's like, well, window or aisle.
But that's the thing, because as much of it, he wanted it to be a certain way, he was also very generous in featuring so many different players.
Right.
So I guess it's a matter of when Frank tells me to be featured, I will do that. And then if not, I will do the part as I'm told.
Yeah, and that's pretty much how it works. But consider it in the context of an orchestra. If an orchestra has people that are supposed to be in their lane playing their part, and then suddenly they start changing their stuff, that's not what the composer intended. They're playing what's on the page, and it's supposed to be done to everybody works to get the right emotional content out of the thing. And my dad wrote his music as if the rock band was the orchestra. And this is all notated and it's really arranged. He knows how he wants it to be. So if somebody else thinks they know better, they don't. That's not what he's asking for. And so that's why they got fired,
So then let's bring it to today. What's the one thing that drives Dweezil nuts as the band leader, unless you're a benevolent dictator? I assume that there are certain things you're like, no, it's...
Well, the thing is, what we have is the ground rules are set up exactly what we talked about. Everybody has their lane. And what you also have to realize is when you're playing hard stuff like this, you have to arrange it so that certain things, the hardest stuff, has to be performed by at minimum 2 instruments, if not 3, so that if somebody does fall off the part because they get distracted or something goes wrong, the line still moves on.
Got it.
We never arrange, and my dad didn't either, where only one instrument played the hard part. It has to be layered so that in case something goes wrong, it still is played.
That's gotta be so hard, because so much of what Frank did were septuplets and sextuplets. There were so many it wasn't just a straight linear thing. And so to have 2 people have to be executing that to some degree at the real time must have been nerve-wracking.
It is, and we've done versions of like Inca Roads before where you're doing the blazing tempo version, and I'm playing parts that were written for marimba that are impossible on the guitar. I mean, just not meant to be played on the guitar at all.
Not in standard tuning anyway.
But so then what happens is if it's suddenly like there's a lighting cue or it gets too dark and it's like, I can't see, and I drop off, somebody else has to keep playing, or vice versa. But you hear in your headphones, you're like, okay, we're playing, oh, somebody's gone. You're like, if there's 2 more people playing, you're okay until it's just you, and you're like, then it becomes that Star Wars moment, like stay on target, you have to get to the end because you don't want the piece of music to not have that, one voice be there. So it's nerve-wracking, and you can never play any of this music in a way where you feel like, oh yeah, I'll just walk up there and do it. It's just, this stuff will kick your ass no matter how prepared you are. You're always going to be doing battle.
Yet you have to go in there with this sense of like, I can't just be like sitting here looking at my feet and just, you have to entertain and you have to make it seem effortless.
Well, that kind of comes along with it. I mean, I definitely can't be out here like bouncing around and jumping like Edward Van Halen on stage because I got too many things to worry about. But at the same time, the different way that comes out is the playful nature of the improv or the jokey storytelling or the folklore that comes in day to day from tour. You know, so you look at a song like Punky's Whips, which we're playing, where that whole song was based on this fact that Terry Bozzio had found a picture of what he thought was a girl, but ended up being the guitar player from Angel, Punky Meadows. And my dad wrote basically a mini opera about this mistaken love affair. But nobody else would write a song like that. It's a 12-minute song with all kinds of crazy things in it and this ridiculous storyline. But that comes from the things that happen on the road, you know? So that would have happened at a rehearsal or something, and then my dad would have turned it into a song, and then it became just part of history. Oh, hey, we're getting...
Got some gremlins.
In there.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. But the fact that his mind worked that way.
Yeah. But the beauty of these things is that when you have people that are prepared and ready to just follow along, it's almost like whose line is it anyway? You know, anybody can finish anybody's sentence musically or otherwise. There's a lot of silliness that does happen, and I do one part of the show where it just became a thing on this tour, where we pretend that we are entering a jazz club at the top of the world. It's a tiny little igloo run by the King Penguin himself, and his job is to annoy the musicians that play in his club. He only likes jazz music that is played at the most furious tempo, and he only likes the whole tone scale. So he makes it very limited. And so I will try to make the band struggle through whatever the King Penguin demands.
And that is you. You are the King Penguin.
Well, what the funny part is the audience ends up learning that it is me, but first, I pretend it's not me, you see.
Ah.
So you said like 1,600 shows or something along
Yeah.
those lines. Since you were talking briefly about like your headspace when you're playing this stuff, because I look at your pedal board and I think about the material you're playing, and my head goes like, I don't even know how you could possibly do this. Like, where is your headspace just in general when you're playing this? Like you said, you're finding that balance in between songs, you talk and things like that.
Well, all of that has to start before you ever go on stage and before you ever start rehearsals. So, for example, you don't have a camera looking down here to see this, but I have probably 10 or 12 banks of sounds that will be used for the whole set list. And in each bank, there's 10 sounds.
Okay.
So if I have, I think I roughly have 127 presets that I will at one point use during the show. And it's basically because if I have a clean sound or a dirty sound or a very specific sound, those will be at this end, and then lead sounds will be at this end. But under each sound, I have an alternate sound. So if I accidentally step on something, I need to be able to have like a way to get out of it and get to the next thing and be in the right place. But every so often, I'll step on the bank sound, and that takes me down a level.
Yeah, and then a totally different story.
How do I get back?
Then I have to go. So it's a bit of a tap dance that you have to figure out before you start playing to some degree. And then if the set changes and you have to move songs around, then you have to do all this rejiggering of the stuff. But the biggest issue is you have to think about like damage control. You have to be able to know, like, okay, this could happen, this could go wrong, and if I don't have a way to quickly get back to where I need to be,
you're sunk.
Then I'm gonna have some problems for a little while. And so that's part of the thing is you have to not only think about the songs, you have to think about the sound design, and then you have to think about what could go wrong, and then you have to build it in a way that is easy enough for you to control. So for example, even on like the Van Halen song that we're playing, one of the things I have to do before I play the solo is I have to stand like this with my foot hovering over a preset so that I can be playing, and then at the right time step on it. But the problem is I can't step on it right on the downbeat because it doesn't change fast enough. So I have to go slightly ahead of it.
Wow.
And it's like, so you have to get used to playing in this position. And so sometimes, like, if I'm not comfortable in the feeling of the balance of what I normally have, let's say I get to it a little bit late. Now my head is like, this doesn't feel like what we're supposed to be doing. So these tiny little things that shouldn't matter make all the difference in your brain, and they take over. And then you start to tell yourself, you're not going to make it, or whatever. And that can actually make you not play what you need. So there's like a mental game in it all that is the unspoken thing that a lot of people probably go through. But for me, that's like the biggest problem is the mental.
How do you tune that out?
You can't.
It's just there.
Yeah. So, I could be in the middle of the song and already thinking, man, I hope I don't have that problem. And then it's like, well, why am I thinking about the problem? Why am I not just playing the song?
Yeah.
But how much is would you say over the course of the night is we'll call it scripted, where your preset changes, you know what you do, versus like, say, your drummer or your bass player or your guitar, somebody does something where like you were talking about before, where you're like, oh, I like that. And you're 127, whatever it is that you have, I don't want to stick with what I have normally. I actually want to step outside a little bit.
Well, I can give you an example.
Do you tend to do that at all?
Oh, yeah, I can give you an example of, because I have a whole section built in some of the songs where if I want to take it to the next level, I can go ahead and do that, where let's say I'm in Inca Roads. So I've got all kinds of textures to use in this one. So like this one starts off with a real like, and see how it's got like this feedback thing. It's only on one side, this feedback happens. But I have these things where it's like, if I want a texture, I will start with something. But if it's in the solo, I have these two solos here, and under each one, I have another sound. So let's say I start here. And if I hear something and I want to change, so I can have totally different vibes. Which is a crazy sound. But the point is, like, at any moment, like, I could be playing and then I could just. But each one gives me like a new theme or a new way to go ahead and create a different vibe. And, sometimes I don't really know what I want to play, but if I set myself up with a sound, like I don't even remember what this one's supposed to be. forgot I have a totally clean sound that I blend in with all of this. So it's like, wait, that one, maybe it's not on for this sound, but let's see. Yeah,
Oh, there you go, yep.
So like, how about here? Yeah. So yeah, the whole idea is that I will have layers where something like this is mixed in. Let's see, let me find a really good example of that so we can, there's a good amount of low end on this.
Yeah.
And that's just like, the clean sound, so.
Excuse me. That sounds great.
So that's just a DI sound,
Yeah.
It's totally dry, yeah.
I think it needs to be pointed out, highlighted, at least watching, like you're going through QSE K12.2s, and it sounds tremendous up here on stage as well.
Thanks. Yeah. So, but check it out. This is the clean sound, but now if you get the sound that my dad had where it's almost the immediate attack and the sound of the low strings. So if I take that out, still sounds good, but you're missing like this sparkle and some detail. But let's say I'm playing on that sound and I hear something and I want to kick it to the next level. Now, so that kind of stuff. If I take that out.
Is that always like a direct clean, or do you ever incorporate like an amp clean?
I usually
modeling?
only use it as a DI, because that's what my dad did. In his rig, he had 2 DIs and 3 amps in the 70s. Mm-hmm. So it was a really cool, crazy setup. But to recreate some of those sounds, see, he might have a completely mid-range side and a low side and some other high. He would split the signal into different categories, but then also have a clean DI or 2 clean DIs mixed in.
Right.
That were super compressed.
And he'd have piezo pickups on guitars and like weird plate in the neck and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the stuff you're not supposed to do.
Yeah, exactly. But, and I don't know how you're capturing the audio. I don't know if you get a clean direct out of this as well. But the main thing is that the blending of the sound of the clean with a modulated, distorted sound, you just get this definition that's needed when you're using a lot of an effect, and it might be too much, You just get more definition.
Oh, that old song.
Yeah.
But it's so much. I mean, you're really messing with a lot of frequencies.
Yeah.
And to have that in an ensemble like this, where you've got some, it's like, it's knowing when to have that right sound.
Well, there's built-in things in the arrangement itself to leave room for it, so that helps.
Yeah.
But that's the thing that my dad was really good at, was like creating a place to just have a sonic playground and then go out there and just make stuff.
Yeah.
You know, he just used it as an opportunity to spontaneously compose music. He wasn't like, hey, here's my bitchin' guitar solo. He was like, I'm writing music and it's happening in the moment. And he was a guy that could respond to what he heard. You know, he had a huge rhythmic vocabulary, so he could just constantly change things up. And that's one of the hardest things for me as a guitar player, is to match even one tiny 64th of what he had in terms of the vocabulary rhythmically. I don't play drums. You know, he started as a drummer, and you know, he's one of the most sophisticated rhythmic composers. So I have to kind of learn stuff and have them seep into my own vocabulary, but I can't push the boundaries as far as he could rhythmically.
It's funny you mentioned that too, because I read somewhere that I think it's on Apostrophe, where he's playing with Jack Bruce, and he's like, I had a tough time playing with him only because rhythmically he was not in line with what Frank wanted to do. Yeah. And it's mind blowing. You think someone like Jack Bruce, and then you think Frank Zappa, and you think they would just be like two peas in a pod, but it sounded like there was a little bit of like a clash going on there.
Yeah, well, because, you know, it's basically like lead bass, right? You know, so it's not
window or aisle.
Well, yeah.
Send Jack Bruce packing.
Yeah. Jack Bruce, from what I've seen, was not that nice talking about the experience of stuff, and he seemed like he was an asshole. So
I'll just get right to it.
Yeah. So, but whatever, you know. He's played some music that a lot of people like, and I do like what he sounds like on Apostrophe, but...
I love it. It's a great bass line, but yeah, I get it. Sometimes two people don't have to like each other to make great music.
Yeah. So. Sometimes they can make greater music when they don't like each other either.
Well, and that brings up a good point too. Over the years, I mean, since you've been recording since, what, 12?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a long time. Not that you're old, but the point being, the number of people that you've collaborated with, Pat Boone, Ozzy Osbourne, Lisa Loeb, it's all over the map.
Yep.
Is there stuff on the floor that we haven't heard where you're like, oh, there's me hanging out with I wish it would just see the light of day? Or...
Well, I have been going through my archives, so to speak, and I've been putting some of that stuff up on YouTube. I've been doing a lot more with my YouTube channel these days, but I have a record that's called What the Hell Was I Thinking? That
I was going to ask you about
all these different guitar players on it, you know, Edward's on it, Brian May, Steve Vai, Steve Morris, Albert Lee, Angus and Malcolm Young, Yngwie Malmsteen, Joe Walsh. Yeah. So it's basically, you got to think of it like a continuous piece of music that's constantly changing. Like if you were turning the knob on a radio station and you just kept tuning in something different, the music changes, the tempo changes, the environment changes, and all of a sudden you just hear different guitar players coming out of the speakers. So there's still players that I want to get on there, and I started it back in '91, but I didn't really have a chance to work on it continuously this whole time because there's been some technical problems, and I recently got it all put into a DAW where I can actually start working on it, but I plan to mix it in Atmos and have it be a surround sound experience. And
rhythm section's the same in the track, or does that change too?
Over the time, I've replaced things. You know, I started with one drummer who I replaced all his parts, and you know, there's all kinds of things. You know.
Well, that's it. With that many people too, and that many managers, I would imagine. You know, if you said, "Hey, I'm going to put this song out tomorrow," do you have to get clearance from everybody, or is it like
we have paperwork from back in the day?
Yeah.
You know, so. But yeah, it's a pretty crazy thing. I'll document it in some way, probably on the YouTube channel at some point.
Was it always called What the Hell Was I Thinking? Or is it like in hindsight, you're like, what the hell?
It pretty much started as something else. It started as just being called 22, because originally I randomly decided to make a 22-minute piece of music. But then it was like, hey, what if I make it the exact length of a CD, which was at the time 75 minutes.
Right.
So it's a 75-minute piece of music that constantly changes, and it has all these different people on it. So, we'll see. There's probably a good, I don't know, dozen more people that I will try to get on there that are of, today's guitar hero status.
But it's funny. It's like when we buy a guitar, we're like, that's it. I got everything I need. I mean, you're never going to get to that point where you're like, you know what? That's it. We got all the guitar players. It's fine. Oh, what about that guy? Oh, she's great.
Yeah.
You have to eventually edit it and say, look, dude, it's time. Because I want to hear it.
Yeah, eventually it'll be there. But, obviously I have not been in a hurry. So,
Well, you've been busy.
A little bit, here or there. But, it's going to be interesting. So stay tuned.
Yeah. I have a digital modeling. You've been on digital modeling for amps and whatnot for better part of 14, 15
at least
plus years or so. And there is the school of thought of digital doesn't sound anything like, your good old fashioned tube amps.
Right.
Clearly that's not your stance. Was that a process that won you over at some point? Because you got won over seemingly pretty early on.
Yeah, well, the thing is, there's two ways to look at it. Of course, one being sound and the other being flexibility. So when it comes to touring and having to recreate sounds like I have to, where if I want to make it sound exactly like the record, and I don't have the gear that was used to make the record, the digital world is the best way to go. I used to have a rig that had multiple amps, multiple speaker cabinets, and it was like 2 refrigerator racks filled with stuff. And it broke every day.
Yeah.
So it just really wasn't good to have on the road. And so that's the point where I switched to the digital stuff, because a lot of the internal routing and effects and things can be stored in a preset, and it basically is not going to change the sound of it based on cables or whatever. So from the flexibility standpoint, I was like, all right, this definitely beats the analog world in that way, but now can I get the sounds and the feel that I want? And so over a period of time, I was able to become satisfied with what's possible. And the real key to it is the speaker IRs. If you are using the right kind of speaker IR, and if people don't know what I'm talking about, it's an impulse response. That does most of the work, because the long and the short of it is, the speaker is what the amp is playing through, and if you have the right EQ setting for that, you don't have to use as much to make the amp sound good. The more you have to keep adding EQ and all things from somewhere else, the more problems you're going to have in making something sound authentic or legitimately good, because you're going to just be using Band-Aid fixes all over the place. So that became the real learning curve, was make sure you have the right kind of speaker impulse response, and then all your amps will actually sound better. And so that's what I've been doing.
Would you say outside of reliability and flexibility, though, that they're at a point technology and quality-wise that you are kind of there?
Well, for me, I feel like it's been that way for a long time. But it's again, you have to know what you're doing with the programming. It's not. Some things, you just put on a preset and it's like, this sounds terrible.
Totally.
But it can sound better. You just have to know what to do.
Yep.
That's the point. Do your homework, because we work for a musical instrument company where we sell that gear, and we have to talk to people off the ledge sometimes. I bought that piece of gear and it didn't sound anything like the video. It's like, well, you have to read the manual, do your homework. I can imagine the amount of hours you sat down and dialed in those sounds. And now, yes, you can, but you did all that homework to get to that point. Right. And that's the hard part. It's like learning an instrument. You have to take the time and really play and really practice. And it's the same with gear.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, if you really are interested in solving problems and giving yourself ultimate flexibility, you should take the time to discover what's possible with this. If you're more comfortable with an amp, just use an amp. Sure. It's fine, no big deal. I love the way amps sound. I'm not saying that amps aren't useful. They are. They sound great. But if you have a lot of things that you have to do, a lot of territory to cover, I can do so much more with this setup than I could with any other setup. It's a very complex thing. I mean, I'm still using other pedals and things, but that's because I want to have more than what is just inside the fractal. It's like, imagine it this way. If you're in a studio and you only had the mixing console and you only had that one set of EQ and everything that it's going through the whole time, yeah, it'll sound fine, but it might sound flat. Like if you then had an API and a Neve and you were having crossover frequencies that you could get added in, there's like a richness in certain areas that one has that the other doesn't. So if you're able to bring that in, that's what I feel like I'm able to do by having other pedals. It just adds more beyond the regular algorithm in the fractal, so that I can have the layers of detail and character and EQ that don't exist in the box, but I have access to them when I need it.
Right.
You know, and that's all really just knowing the tools.
Again, the knowledge to do it.
Before we go, though, I want to toss one to you. What would it mean if somebody had the tone of a ham sandwich?
Frank Zappa said to me once, "Your tone sounds like an electric ham sandwich."
Oh, my dad.
We can
my
we
dad,
ask that question?
Yeah, my
Does that
dad.
sound like something you'd hear around the house?
Well, I know exactly what he was referring to.
Well, we met with Steve and Joe in Red Bank, and he said,
a good connective thought there,
he
Dan.
said, you're a great player, kid, but you sound like an electric ham
Yes.
sandwich.
Yes.
What is that? That's Zappa-ese for something?
Well, at the time, Steve was using an MXR Distortion Plus as his main lead tone, and it was just really high frequency stuff. There was no low mids, so it was tinny.
Yeah.
And my dad used to have to try to tweak some other mid-range into it. Now, even to this day, Steve's tone is very detailed in the high end, but it's smoother than it was then. So he was also using a Strat, which was all single coil pickups. So it was adding to the...
Into a Marshall or a Carvin?
It was, I think it was a Carvin he was playing at the time.
Yeah, so that's a pretty bright recipe right there.
It was very bright, you know, and that also had graphic EQ on that amp.
Right.
So that was probably also like giving him extra 2K or
More
whatever.
like chicken salad.
Yeah, or not ham. Well, but see, because we talk about this all the time, the universal idea of music and food and how you can cut. And Frank always seemed to have food references in everything.
Yeah. Well, it's also similar in that it's a recipe, you know, so you can always try to find the ingredients to get you the nuances of what you're looking for. And then sometimes the missing ingredient for some people, they'll never get because they're not operating or listening for what that nuance is. They might have the notes, but they might not have the tone. They might not have the feel. And they might not actually hear what they're not giving you. You know, and what my dad was very good at was seeing what was missing and like finding the way to bring it or elevate it to that. And he would often describe that as certainly within his own music as it has to have the eyebrows. You know, the thing that makes you go, what is that? You know?
That makes sense.
So
did he ever equate your playing to any type of food around, you know?
not that I ever heard, but yeah, you know, the best thing about my dad was that he was so quick-witted and could come up with the best things immediately. And we played this game where we would have to try to come up with a word that should be in the dictionary but wasn't. So you need a scenario for it. So one time I was talking to him about, we need a word for the kind of person that only ever wears a rock and roll t-shirt. And he didn't think about it for even a nanosecond. And he said, a cross between two words, he said insignoramus, which was a direct cross between ignoramus and insignia. So like the logo.
He just came up with
and so insignoramus in 2 seconds or like less than 2 seconds was the first thing out of his mind, you know.
That's funny.
See, but that's the beauty of what you're doing is that you lived with the man and you want to keep that genius alive and the fun of it. I mean, that must have been something that kept you on your toes every day, man.
Always, super fun, And I mean, of course, I'm not saying any of this is easy because it's not, but if you love doing it and you like focusing on the details and the layers and the nuance, then this is a world you could live in your entire life. There's so much to try to learn about it. I definitely find new things all the time. And I've been doing this unexpectedly for the last 20 years. I didn't set out to do this at all, but it just became a labor of love. And it's almost the same as, like, I've described it before, where, like, if my dad was a medieval shoemaker and we were living back in those days, I would learn how to make the shoes the same way. Oh, it's got the pointy curled toe. Yeah. That's our thing. All right, let's make the best, curly toe shoe. But I mean, it's like you have to know what the craftsmanship and the details are to do it the right way. And then if you're going to add your thing to it, great. But it should be an apples to apples comparison in the first place, is what I view it as. And so, even when I started, I knew people were going to want to rip whatever I did to shreds, but I didn't care, because what I did is I said, I'm going to play this stuff the best I can and let the music speak for itself. If you think you can do it better, good luck.
So we've taken up enough of your time, and I want you to play us out.
Okay.
All right. On anything you want, I would say play a Van Halen song. But anything like do you know Secrets? That's one of my favorite songs.
I actually don't. I should.
That's the next one.
Yeah, I should.
Have you heard the Push Comes to Shove solo? And like the
Yes,
intro? Oh my God. I still don't know how you do it. Like you're standing there with your foot up for like a minute.
I have to grab the guitar for that. But
yeah, let's hear it, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. The challenge is always that it's the most nuanced guitar solo that he ever did. And I know for a fact that it wasn't a one-take solo. It was something that was put together in the studio.
Yeah.
So having to actually play it as a live thing,
as a one
and
take,
then coming from a rhythm part right into it, that's the hardest part of it in its entirety, really.
So no pressure,
Yeah, we'll see, I might have to do it 10 times. But here's the thing, is like, I was telling you, I have to like hover my foot.
Right.
So it's, I have to come from playing the part. See how if I didn't get it fast enough to change, and we didn't hear it go right into it. So now check it out. If I try it again, I have to go slightly ahead of the beat. It got too dark for me. Anyway.
No, it's great.
Yeah, but you got the
I'm
idea.
literally hearing Alex Van Halen on the one side here when you're doing that.
Well, see, I have like all these little layers of details in this where, like you have the tiniest little bit of the slapback.
Yeah.
But it's the clean echoplex before. It's not like distorted. You hear it's a clean slap, and that's what he had, But all these little layers of sound.
And the snarl in there. It's just
I like that it has this this guttural low mid thing, like right here. There's this mid-range thing he has on it that's so good.
Yeah.
they got to switch right into, the flanger sound.
yeah, man.
But you know what I did at the end of this was the song doesn't have an ending, so I had to put an ending on it.
That's right, fades out, right?
Yeah, so I put this ending on it. So it's like a. Wait, hold on. This is another one where I have to stand like this. So it's like a.
It's 81 all over again. That's
Yeah.
awesome, dude.
Yeah,
Thank you
that's
so
awesome.
much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
We're all smiling.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of music. Go out and play.
Yes.
Thanks, man.
Good times. Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Did Frank do work on his own guitars, or do you have a guy?
He had a guy. I don't know who did originally.
Is it lower than
I don't
that?
have a heavy touch. It might be.
Get out.
And 70s Pauls are different too, because the headstock angle's a lot.
Now, what about the
less
frets
rounded.
on that?
Same.
They're pretty flat.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
But no, are they
It's
original?
Not quite a fretless wonder, but it's there.
It's just quite a bit heavier as
Yeah,
expected.
Well, if you need help, let me know.
Wow.
But that's about as straight arrow, like rock star guitar as Frank would have. It always seemed like he wanted to have something left of center. And then to see him with a Les Paul is like,
Yeah.
there it is. He's
Yeah.
Jimmy Page too.
Yeah.
You should get Page on that song.
Quite.
I know. I'd like to. I talked to him about it a long time ago. I just have to. See
Happy
if
to
I
imagine
can-
it's tough to get him out of
Yeah.
wherever he is. That'd be
Yeah.
amazing. What a get.
Yeah,
Did
it
you ever
would be
get
cool.
back on it?
I
Jake go?
didn't
There he
quite
is.
get it, but there's a possibility. I have something that we did.
Oh, no kidding.
That I might be able to make it
That would be quite the
work
get.
into it. Yeah.
What the hell were you thinking?
Yeah. But see, even on my own guitar, like the action is pretty low, but not as low.
Yeah, it's
as
a little
that.
bit, yeah.
Do you have these two set up the same?
Yeah. But the thing that is really
nice.
wild is just how loose this tremolo is, and that one's even
It's looser
more.
than a Bigsby. It feels
It's
like
the, what's the bridge in that one? It's
Vega.
The Vega
Trim.
Trim.
Yeah.
Remember where
Yeah.
Lifeson had one?
Yeah,
It was like,
exactly.
I can't stop using it.
Yep.
Yeah,
It felt great.
This one,
light too,
this
yeah.
one is even lighter feel than this one.
Oh my God, it's like nothing. It's just like, it's almost like rubber, yeah.
Holy.
Yeah,
That's super cool.
but that's best for when you have to do things like all those kind of
Slurs.
So expressive. It sounds great.
It's so Becky. Yeah.
Because we've ended as lovers.
yeah, because you
You
can.
ever muck out, like not use a pick? You ever just think I'll.
I'm not that good at it. I would
either.
like to. All that. All the.
Where were you?
Yeah, where were you?
You know that song? That's
I-
amazing. Just the touch on that is amazing.
I would
And that's
definitely.
Just a regular Strat.
I know. I definitely like to spend some time to learn some of those things in the
So
same
cool.
way that I've learned some Van Halen stuff. I just never have had time.
We'd like to give a huge shout out to our friends at Universal Audio for making this possible. If you enjoyed what you watched and you want to see more content like it, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to check out the gear we talked about, come check us out at AmericanMusical.com.
I'm thinking about one of these tours doing like a thing where I open for myself and as like an 80s cover band and then do like I was thinking about doing like either a full record like the whole Fair Warning album or something.